welcome to Puzzled Parents. I'm very excited today as we have a special guest. This is Cheryl. Everybody, welcome Cheryl. Thank you for being here today. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of how the autism world has touched your life?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Susan. So I've been a special education specialist for the last 25 years, all in high school. And so working one-on-one with our students who are on the spectrum, those with mild needs and those with very significant needs. And in that journey, I have become very much aware of the incredible strengths of the kids on the spectrum and just being able to have a relationship with them, gaining their trust, gaining their loyalty, understanding that I'm there for them and I have their back, and still allowing them to be who they are on the spectrum without trying to put them into the box of those who are not. So that has been my jam forever and loved it every minute of it. And I really actually miss working one-on-one with the kids right now, but I remember them all with such great memories.
It's definitely an interesting journey. There's never a dull moment for sure.
No.
What kind of things did you find if something were to jump out of your mind, like the top three things or challenges that you encountered both with them and for them kind of over your years of experience?
Well, I mean, the education system, is very barbaric in some ways and still trying to fit all of our kids into this box. And so their strengths are not magnified, but their weaknesses are very much, where they need some extra help is very much evident. And yet, if we focus on their strengths and we allow them to focus on their strengths and be able to tell us what their strengths are, how they learn best, and adapt to that, not only does it support them, but it really supports everyone in the classroom. And I also found, I'm a teacher first, and I do know that 99.9% of the teachers do their very best with what they can. But, there's a lot of the education system, the teachers go from high school to university to teaching. And there's not a lot of that in between where they learn, you know, aspects of autism or ADHD or kids, or neurotypical kids where they just feel lost because they don't know. So,
Right.
not a blame, but, there are ways to know, there are ways to find out. And I find there's that disconnect between teachers and parents where, parents don't feel like they have a voice in the school, especially when it gets to high school, because the whole independent thing comes up. And so I think there's that gap between teachers and parents. Parents know their kids best, teachers know their subject matter best, and really with some communication, we could see a lot more
Right.
success and support for our kids.
Now you're in Canada,
I am.
so I know I don't know a lot about the Canadian school system. I'm sure a lot of our watchers don't either. Can you kind of share a little bit about what that looks like? I know in our schools we have they went to inclusive, so they don't have just special ed classes. I mean, they do for certain students if they're what we used to call lower functioning. I don't know, that's not the right term now, but
Mhm. Yeah.
um, does Canada have all inclusive? Do they have specific special education classes? Like, how's that set up?
It's really a combination of both. We do have some special education classes. We call them practical learning program, where kids mainly on the spectrum come in. They'll have a special education teacher, smaller classes, and then those kids are also integrated in some mainstream classes in the high school system. And we call it inclusion, but we did have a few students with very non-speaking autism that had very significant needs. And although we called it inclusion, they were in
Hmm.
a classroom by themselves with three educational assistants, came in at a different time, left at a different time. So I'm not sure how they called that inclusion.
Right.
But there was a little discrepancy there. Here, parents can pick their home school if they choose. So if they live in a catchment area, they can pick that school. And sadly, not
Okay.
every school has the best of the best programs for their
Mhm.
kids. But if parents have a different perspective of it, they can pick that school and the school must adapt. And the sad thing about must adapt means very limited resources, very limited educated staff and training, where we do have some schools that, the training and the support money is there for the kids, but they would have to be bused in. It would be inconvenient for parents
Right.
to get them there. So it really is a catch-22 in that
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we have some of that here. I know, for example, I live in a rural area, but I'm not far from the bigger cities like Richmond or Virginia Beach, Newport News, kind of those areas. But like you say, in order to have access to those more specialized schools, if you can get your child into it, then you have the issue of, well, they're going to have to sit on this bus
Yeah,
for a long time. And what
yeah,
is that going to do? How is that going to impact their day? How is that going to take away from the total energy that they have for the day to devote to behaving appropriately and paying attention and internalizing the learning when they've spent all this energy on the bus trying to remember to stay in their seat and behaving appropriately with the other kids on the bus. And, I always say that every day we have kind of an energy allowance
yeah,
and we spend it on different things. So if you spend a lot of your energy budget in the beginning of the morning on this long bus ride, you don't have much left when you get to the end of the day, if any at all. And
yeah,
so, it's kind of a give or take. Well, yes, we can do that, but are they really going to get the most benefit if they can't function by the time it's through?
yeah. And then you have bus drivers who are not trained,
Right?
or you have, educational assistants on the bus to support the kids,
Mhm.
again, not trained. And, with so much as they didn't get in their regular seat,
Mhm.
then that's the end of the day for them. And,
Right.
easy things to fix, if you are trained and those are the easy, they're not all easy fixes, but there are some things that, you know, can be done in a
Right.
very minimal effort way to be able to support our kids getting on that bus.
Right. Yeah. We encountered that when my daughter was younger and she was getting on the regular bus. But, and as you know, people with autism or kids with autism can sometimes have that lack of impulse
Yeah.
control or regulation.
Yes.
And so she was getting up and going to other people and sitting in different seats and things. And so she almost got kicked off the bus. And I said, wait a minute. She's not being defiant. This is not an intentional thing.
Yeah.
Put something in place, make her sit behind the driver, put a bus buddy on the outside of the seat to remind her, hey, Kayla, you're not allowed to get up. We have to stay in our seat.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have that ability to process that, oh, I'm not supposed to get up. Maybe I shouldn't walk while the bus is moving, and her mind was going, oh, I got to go tell somebody this right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was as far as it would go, but yeah, so that can present its own set of challenges there. And fortunately, I knew the bus drivers that did the special ed buses because the one went to my church and she had been a driver forever and ever. So I got her on the special ed bus because they're the only buses with seatbelts. And I'm like, make sure she puts on her seatbelt, she'll stay in her seat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No more problems after
Yeah.
that. It was just the little fixes and little things. So I know here in the US, we have the IEP meetings where we set up the parameters for what supports the child's going to need.
Yeah.
What kind of things do they have in Canada? Do you have those? What does that look like?
Yeah, we certainly do. We call them IPRCs. And so, coming into high school, part of my responsibility would, our high school starts at grade 9. I don't know about where you are.
Yeah.
But in grade 8, starting really early in grade 8, I would have meetings at the grade 8 school, creating an IEP that makes sense for high school. They're very, very different when they get to high school. In our elementary schools, up until grade 8, they can be up to 15 pages. Every subject has its own, 3 or 4 pages of IEP accommodations. But we try to get it down to, 1 or 2 pages if we can.
Mhm.
And so that would be the big transition for kids would be, I would be starting almost in the beginning of grade 9, meet with them multiple times, meet with the parents and the teachers multiple times, see how they learn best, what feels comfortable, give them a really good familiarity. I wanted to be their go-to person. I wanted them to always know they had my back, my face to look at, my office to go to. They always had an
Right.
escape plan. My more significant needs kids always had, and this is probably not a great idea, always had my cell phone number to text me. And their
Right.
parents did too, because if we ever got into a situation where, they were in a place in the school where they were lost or feeling really unsafe, they could just text me where they were and I would go get them. And that gave them a whole year of familiarity because we know, routine and familiarity is so, so important. And then we
Yeah.
would begin having tours of the school. In grade 8, they would come to the school. I would take them to every single class that they would be going to. So they knew the room numbers, they knew the locker numbers, the washrooms, all of those things, multiple,
Wow.
multiple times. So when they got there in grade 9, they were very familiar with their surroundings, with their teachers, and always knew exactly how to get to me. So,
That's
and then
amazing.
IEP
Yeah.
meetings, then we have once a year, we review the IEPs, we have the parents come in again, and with the teachers of that semester to tell
Hmm.
us what was going well, what we still needed some work on. And I always, always, I would
Mm.
never have a meeting without the student at the table. I
Mm.
would cancel meetings if the student wasn't at the table. And that was a little bit of a thorn in some administrators' sides or parents' sides, but I thought that was really important starting from grade 8. Like your kid needs to be very aware. They would have the
Yeah.
IEP in their hand. They would be able to
Yeah.
tell me what their IEP was, what it was for, and scratch out crap that didn't work for them.
Yeah.
I don't need this, but I definitely need this. And it becomes, I find that when we are having secret meetings without our kids, it creates this almost, first of all, shame. And it
Mm.
doesn't, it's like I'm hiding what they need. And when they are, there and available and open to see that this is their right, it's not a favor, this is their
Hmm.
right to ask for. And it
Right.
gives them that strength to learn how to advocate for themselves. Like that's the big skill, right? If we start in
Hmm.
grade 9, by the time they get to grade 11, now they can just knock on the teacher's door and say, listen, I really need extra time today, or I really need this today. And they become so used to advocating for their own needs.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest skills that our kids need.
I don't disagree with that at all. Self-advocation is really, really important. The challenge that I ran into, and I don't know if you've seen this, is that because of her anxiety and things like that, my daughter didn't want to be there because it brought her so much anxiety. And she didn't like hearing people talk about what was hard for her
Yeah.
because she just had a really hard time with that. And so, what we would do is kind of bring her in at the end and kind of give a summary. This is what we talked about. This is what we're
Yeah.
thinking. Do you have any questions? And something like that, because she just couldn't handle being in the room and listening to that. She just didn't like. I mean, nobody likes hearing what their challenges are. I mean, somebody comes
Yeah.
up to me and start telling me what my problems are, I wouldn't like it either.
Yeah, and a lot of the meetings too, when I ran them, were very much reframed to we are talking about strengths first. We are talking about
Yeah.
all the great things. And there could have been the first even 2 or 3 years of meetings where they were just sitting in the corner, reading a book, didn't matter,
Yeah.
but they were still hearing that this doesn't define you. This is just a part of you. as we
Right.
all have a
Yeah.
part of us. We all have to wear glasses, or we all have to be in a wheelchair. We all need insulin. Like, this is just a part of
Yeah.
you. It doesn't define you. And
That's a
so,
nail on the head right there. And I used to tell my daughter that all the time. And that's why I am very big on the language, the person first language, like person with autism, child with autism. I hate, and I've researched it, and apparently people use both, and the autism community is okay with both. But for me, she's a person first,
yeah,
and she happens to have autism. And that's what I would tell her. She had beautiful auburn hair. I'd say, you happen to have blue eyes, you happen to have auburn hair, you happen to wear glasses, you happen to have autism, you happen to be this tall. It's just a part of who they are. It doesn't define who they are or who they can become,
yes,
but it's more just a characteristic, and learning to accept that is a journey that they all need to go on for themselves. My daughter found that when she went to a place called Woodrow Wilson, or they call it Wilson Workforce now, but it was basically where the kids would go stay on campus, and they would get evaluated for different job skills, and they would also have to work on like taking care, keeping their room clean, taking showers every day, managing their own schedule. Depending on their level, they would either have to go to the nurse to get their medicine at a certain time, or they could manage their own meds and things like that. So they're learning all these life skills,
yeah,
but they're also being evaluated for job skills and things like that. And it's one of the very few facilities that we have here. I'm
that sounds
fortunate enough to be in
incredible.
the same state as one that was about 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
But I remember she called me the one day, and she said, "Mom, everybody here is just like me."
Mm,
And it was like, that's when it kind of hit her, like, I'm not a weirdo or a freak, the names that they tend
yeah,
to get called or call themselves. She's like, Everyone here is just like me."
I love it.
And I really think, made peace with it at that time. And her whole attitude shifted, and her whole approach just changed. And she finally was, "Hey, this is who I am, and it's okay."
Yeah. Oh,
And that's a
that's
big moment for
beautiful.
anybody, whether you're neurotypical or not, just saying, "Hey, this is who I am, and I'm okay." It took me till I was 40 something to do that, but
Bingo, bingo.
you know,
Yes.
with
Yeah.
her being able to do that, it was such a blessing. It just changed her life. So I do think that's a very, very important skill and thing for them to know, and to be able to stand up and say, "Hey, because I have friends who, and I don't judge. I'm not walking their journey. I'm not that parent. I'm not walking in their shoes, but I have friends whose kids like don't want people to know. I don't want to tell anybody, you
Yeah.
know. And I get that, but I I just think that's a really hard way to live,
Yeah.
having to pretend, and then being exhausted all the time, and not wanting to socialize or go out because it's just so hard. My thing is, let's flip the narrative, and let's work with the neurotypical people to accept these people for who they are,
Mm,
without bias, without prejudice, without ridicule, without bullying, and just, you ourselves as neurotypical individuals are not perfect.
mm,
We have flaws, we have things that are difficult for us. So how are we any better than a neurodivergent child?
yeah. Yeah. Well, and
And
I find too with parents that I worked with that had that kind of keep it a secret, really, they didn't have access to the resources. They weren't, they weren't open to, but there's this kind of program, and there's this kind of program, and there's, so it really left them very, very isolated.
Yeah.
where, and it was really hard. I have a couple of families in my mind right now where it was, I don't know where they are right now after high
Yeah.
school. And it was so much that, you know, handing them resources that, oh, it really meant admitting something to themselves that they didn't
Mhm.
want to yet admit. And I'm hoping at some point they did, because there were some, you know, and a lot of these parents, what I do now is I give parents the voice. They don't know what's available financially, government
Yeah.
funding, resources in the community. Like there's
Mhm.
so much, there's not enough.
Right.
There's not enough, don't get me wrong, but there are some that will really be supportive of the family.
Oh, and networking. That's one of the things I teach in my courses that I do. Network, network, network. You can't do this journey alone.
Yeah,
And you need to find other parents going through the same journey that you are.
yeah,
I describe it like, and I've said this on other episodes, but I describe it, it's like being in a club. And you don't ask to be in the club, you don't seek membership, but you're in this club, and people in the club are the ones that really get it. So reach out to those other people. I learned more from the other parents that I networked with than I did, and I was in healthcare in this area. I was connected deeply in that network. And I had never heard of the Medicaid waivers in Virginia before. I had never heard of special needs housing vouchers. You know, it's pooling the resources and sharing knowledge and lifting each other up and being able to talk about those difficult moments with people who understand, because they're walking that same journey and they're not going to judge you, because they're right there with you, lifting each
oh,
other up when we're down. And it's just, you need that. I don't know how. I mean, I was a single mom, and my ex-husband denied that she had any issues, you know, and that made it challenging. But even so, as a very empowered single mother who advocated a lot for her child, I couldn't do it. You know,
oh,
find
yeah,
that advocate, find that group of people you can trust and confide in, lean on them and be there for each other. It makes all the difference in the world.
yeah, absolutely. In my position, I like to say that I sit on the fence because I was in the education system as a teacher, in the education system as a specialist. And so I worked with parents all the time, but I
Right.
also worked with teachers, and I also worked with the ministry, and I also worked with admin. So I was able to kind of sit on top and see the entire playing field. And
Right.
so when you come in as an advocate, you have that voice that understands, like I have empathy for teachers. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have a voice for the teachers, I have a voice for the parents, and a voice for the kids. So if you find somebody, if you find an advocate that is able to see, like you as a
Mm-hmm.
parent and you as a coach, you know, able to see, not just going in, you know, you get these, sometimes you get advocates where they just go in guns a blazing. That's it. I'm going to rip down this whole school. I'm going to fire all the teachers. I'm going to, and it gets nobody anywhere. You know, you really have to come
Yes.
in with everybody's perspective and the voice of the kid. Like that's just the way it needs to be.
Yeah, I was so very, very blessed to have a good advocate. Her name was Rachel. She since passed away, but she was very much like that, where she knew the ins and outs of the school system, and a lot of times the teachers knew her, but she had that. There's only so much the school can do.
Yeah.
You know, we need to push them to the edge of that scope of what they can do, but not come in with unrealistic expectations of things that they just are not capable and able of doing, but
Yeah.
rather come in with, this is what we need. How can you help us get what we need? And, you know, that give and take of, I understand where you're coming from, you understand where I'm coming from. So I
Yes.
completely agree with that 100%.
So important. It's so important.
And you know, it's just, and learning, you as a parent need to educate yourself and learn exactly what those limitations are, because
Yeah.
on paper yes, you might have a legal right to that, but like you're saying, are the teachers trained in that? Are there the resources to provide that? And if not, then you need to take another route, like either get training for the teachers, go to the people who are in charge of the resources and say, hey man, I need some resources here.
Yeah,
And, still be that strong advocative voice, but work within the system that you have.
yeah,
And as a parent, you are your child's strongest voice, or you as an advocate, I know you're doing the coaching and advocacy work. So, you being that voice for them with that knowledge is powerful.
yeah,
It really, really is.
yeah.
And
And well, and two, when you go in as an advocate, guns a blazing, you get nothing accomplished except pushback. You get teachers feeling offended and angry. You
mhm,
get administrators feeling, now they're going to get pushback. So if you can go in, with everyone's perspective, can we shine a light on everybody in the room
yeah,
and have that approach? It is just so different of an outcome. It really, truly is.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of, and I went through myself, was just not understanding the power balance.
Mhm.
Because I don't know about there, but here, a lot of times, and I experienced this when my daughter was young, especially, the school will kind of come and sit back, like, oh, well, we're just going to give you this and we're going to do that. And that's what we're going to do. And you're going to like it and you're going to sign it.
Yeah.
But understanding that you're the parent, take your power back. You have power, you have rights. And although you, like you were saying, you don't want to be overbearing with those rights, but it's like I told my daughter when I homeschooled her, because I pulled her out and homeschooled her for 7 years. A test is not for me to see what you've learned. It's for me to know how well I've taught you.
Mhm.
And so kind of turning that narrative around, like the IEP is not about them dictating to me what they're going to do for my child, but it's me saying, this is what we need. This is what I want you to do. What are you able to do?
Yeah, that's exactly it. When, going in with questions when I go into these meetings is, it's not, I don't want to hear what you can't do. I want to know what you
Mhm.
can do. What can you do? And then we will work with the rest. But what can you do? What are you offering me? You go into some of these meetings and the teacher, well, I can't do this and I don't have time for this and I don't have time for and valid,
Yeah.
but let's turn that conversation around. So, okay, but what can you do here? What can we
Mhm.
do together that we can, support him or her in the classroom? And I gotta tell you, 75% of what you can do is good for all, is good for every
Mhm.
single kid in that class. So
Yes.
while teachers sometimes feel like, oh my God, you're giving me something else to do, if you really think about it, yes, but it's also good for everybody.
Mhm.
So now that changes the game.
And yeah, and that long run, it's going to make less work for them because all the students are going to benefit. You're going to have a lot less behavioral issues. You're going to have less disruptions, more cooperation, more good attitudes. People are going
Mhm.
to want to be there and enjoy being in your class, which, that's going to cut your mental and emotional toll
Yeah.
down so much because you're not having to then use your energies to redirect everybody, to motivate everybody, to deal with behavioral issues of even the neurotypical kids and things
Yeah.
like that. So 100%,
Yeah.
100%. So tell me a little bit more about kind of what it is you're doing now, because I know you're not in the schools anymore, correct?
Right. Well, right now I'm living life with this podcast that I have, Parenting Teens Advice Redefined, and we talk about parents who have neurodivergent families, but we also
Mhm.
talk about every really tough, hard challenges the teens are dealing with, anxiety, depression, um,
Mhm.
suicide, eating disorders, autism. I mean, I have experts on there, and we really, I'm now, because I'm not in the school system, the gift there is the filter that I had to have is no longer there. And so
The
my
gloves are off.
it's just not my face that's doing the non-filter. My voice is, and because I want people to know, I really want people to feel supported and not alone, and that they have a voice. And, and coming from that educator system, like I'm launching into this coaching and consulting, it's really a combination. I can do a consultation with somebody as as an advocate. I can, read a
Mhm.
report and write an IEP for them, sit in a school meeting, no problem. But, it's also very much about supporting the parent to really change. It's not always them. Sometimes it's us, and we need to find
Yes.
our own strength, our own pillar of values of parenting. I belong to so many of these Facebook groups where parents are asking questions. What would you do in this situation? What would you do in that situation? But very much value-based questions like,
Mhm.
can my 15-year-old have her boyfriend over in her bedroom? Or what do you think about drinking or driving and all of this? And I'm thinking, we're tapping into external, someone else's values to get
Mhm.
their opinion on our parenting, where I
Right.
feel like if we, you know, figure out in the coaching programs or whatever it is we do, we figure out what is our value? What does this really mean to me as a parent? How do I want to parent? And we
Mhm.
stand steadfast in those values. When we make decisions for our kids and we have these conversations with our kids about these deep, hard topics, it's
Mhm.
easy. It's easier to have these conversations. You don't falter. You don't waver when you're standing in your own value. And I think
Mhm.
that as any parent, well, parent of, kids with autism or not, if you are standing strong in what you feel, but sometimes we scroll and we compare and we think,
Oh, yeah.
oh, maybe I should do what that mom's doing. I should do what that mom's doing. But you haven't seen the struggle before. You haven't seen, you just see what's on social. So I think it's a big
Yeah.
part of the transformation in coaching and as an advocate is let's figure out who you are, how you want to parent first, how you find your
Yes.
own self-care, what it take what how you find your own calm and silence and, your
Mhm.
bubble around the triggers, and then let's move on to advocacy sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely 100%. Because one thing that I learned was I can affect the outcome of any interaction with her that I have. If she is, starting to melt down or, misbehaving or whatever, how I react to it is something that I can control. The tone of voice that I use, the words that I speak. It can, escalate it or it can, keep the status quo. I can't change what she does and what she says,
Hmm.
but I can change the energy, I guess that's like the word now, the energy that I bring to the situation. You know, in my household growing up and kind of where I'm from Pennsylvania, but like we're very animate. We talk louder, this and that, and it can come off like you're always yelling at me. I'm like, no, I'm just talking, you know, but learning to intentionally be intentional about what you say,
Hmm.
how you say it, the tone of your voice, the volume of your voice
Yeah.
can really make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And it's a skill. It is a skill that you have to learn especially if it's not your nature. And
Of
especially
course.
like I was a single parent, so there wasn't another parent there going, well, let me go talk to them, or, maybe we should come back and talk about this later. It was me doing the best I could.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, And we can regulate our kids without saying a word. We
Mhm.
can take that power of the pause is gold. And just being able to breathe, your kids will see you, they will automatically take on that, as you said, energy.
Mhm.
If you're doing some deep breaths, if you're asking for permission to have some space, all of those things, we can help them self-regulate without even saying a word. And it's so
Mhm.
important.
I'm laughing because not because that's funny, but um, as parents, we sometimes will have habits or do things like your kid will do something, you'd be like, "That's it, no TV for a week," or and then you realize that sucks. That's not a good idea. I don't, you can't watch TV means I can't watch
Yeah.
TV. So when I learned to say, there's going to be a consequence for that, I'm going to think about it and I will let you know what it is. Oh man, she hated that because she knew it was going to be something she didn't like that I was going to stick to. So just again, that skill, learning that presence of mind for you to not react emotionally, but to very intentional about your reactions.
Yeah. And
Powerful,
they
powerful stuff.
100%. And then as they get to be adults, they know that skill. They know to say, I need some space, or there's a different way to say that to me, or, I just need to
Mhm.
breathe. They learn. They never, I mean, let's face it, our teens are not listening to a freaking word we say, but they watch everything we do. They watch
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
And sometimes I would even use the phrase, I need a timeout. Let's come talk about this later. And
Yeah.
so sometimes she would say, I need a timeout, you know, and learning
Love
that's,
it.
I mean, it doesn't work 100% of the time, of course, but it's definitely a powerful tool in your toolbox. The challenge I found with having a child with special needs is that what works today might not be what works tomorrow or an hour from now, but it might work next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having all
So
those
true.
tools in your toolbox and just learning the different strategies and things, and you kind of learn to recognize sometimes like, okay, this situation usually these set of tools work, but it's parents of neurotypical kids do not realize how much work it takes to raise a child with special needs. And I'm
Oh
not
my God.
talking about just physically taking care of them, but like we're talking about that mental intention, planning your life with routines and schedules and strategies. I always said my life became one compensatory strategy. That was
Yeah.
my whole life was one big compensatory strategy.
Yep.
And that wasn't a bad thing. It just people don't get that.
No,
They just don't.
they don't. I wrote an article a little while ago about how, this is when I was deep in the middle of a couple of, non-speaking, very significant needs kids, and
Mhm.
big kids, loud kids, like very can be intimidating kids, but beautiful kids.
Right.
And I thought one day when a parent was dropping their kid off to school, and it was a kid that regularly had to go home early, something happened, had to call. And I
Mhm.
thought, man, like, how hard must it be? Like, we have these little babies, and our first date night out after we have a baby, we pick the person we can trust the most to take,
Mm.
our little treasure for a couple of hours. And, moms who have to, especially single moms who have to get up and think, I have to drop the person I love the most with all of my heart off to a building where I just
Mhm.
hope they care a little bit, just find something in them that's wonderful. And we always
Mhm.
do, like as teachers, we always do. And I always
Right.
think, wow, I can't imagine pulling away from a school thinking, what time are they going to call? What's going to happen? Who's going to get hurt? And it was a regular thing for some of my kids and their
Mhm.
parents. And just really tugged at my heart thinking, and that's kind of where I started going into, I need to have a voice for these parents. I need to be able to say,
Mhm.
we can do this. Let's sit down
Right.
with the school. We can do this and we can do it well.
100%. You've nailed the nail right on the head. That is my mission and my goal is I am a voice and I'm a voice for this community who's some don't have a voice and can't speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So, like you, I have a healthcare background. I've been in healthcare for 30 years. So, I kind of you and I are able to have those perspectives of how those institutions work.
Mhm.
What's good about them? What needs to change about them? How can we help them change? But
Yeah.
on top of that, we understand the other side, the people with the special needs, where, okay, we get them, we know what they need, we know how to interact, and then kind of take the two and balance them
Yeah.
and be that voice to come and say, you know what? If you just did X, Y, and Z over here, that
Yeah.
would help this whole situation.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as a home health therapist, you go into people's homes. And so it's not like they're coming to your clinic. You're going to their domain. It's their house. And
Yeah.
I think it was funny, not haha funny, but every time we would get a patient who was maybe they had anxiety issues or something like that, the other therapist would always pass them to me. They're like, well, that's in your wheelhouse. You can go. Or like, let's say they were on vacation. I went and saw this person and I would get so much more out of them
Yeah.
only because I had that knowledge base and I could marry that with my treatment where I knew how to approach them, when to back off, how much stay to give them in their visit, what kinds of things would bring them stress and how to talk to them in a way that wasn't talking down to them, not that the other therapists are, but they could get it, they could
Mhm.
process it, and they could feel like they were making the decision to do it,
Yeah.
not this person's telling me this and I don't want to do that. Why, if you're sick, you're in pain, you don't want to exercise, you don't want to do this stuff. But if you know the value and then can make a decision, oh, I'm not going to the movies like I used to because of X, Y, and Z. If I do this, then I can get whatever it is that their currency is. What do they want?
Yeah.
My friend's son loves fishing. He's obsessed with fishing. So, hey, if I do this, then I can go out on the boat fishing.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's valuable to them,
Mhm.
and they're going to be like, "Heck yeah, I'll do whatever you say, lady, as long as I can get
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and you have to approach that in a way that's different than like you and I would talk. And just having that skill and that knowledge, it was nice that it was recognized, but in a way it kind of made my job a little harder because now a lot of people on my case are requiring these extra energies and efforts, which I didn't mind at all. But
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I should teach you guys how to do it so you can work with some. But the whole point was, understanding both sides of the coin and being able to
Yeah.
bridge that gap and be a voice. And
Yeah.
that's so much a part of my mission. I know it's close to your heart and kind of what
Yeah.
you're doing as well. Um, can you kind of share with me, like if somebody wanted to reach out to you and connect with you and say, you know what, I really like what you're doing and um, how can I connect with you? Tell us.
Very easy. My website is cherylpankhurst.com, and there's everything there. And there's also, and I'm very open to this, is an opportunity to just have a call with me.
Mhm.
Just and it, I don't care if it's 10 minutes or an hour. There is no obligation to do anything. It's just a matter of, and not everybody can help everybody, but at least we can
Right.
have a conversation. I can either help you or I can direct you to someone or a
Mhm.
resource or a book or,
Right.
whatever that can help you, or, funding from the government, whatever it is. I am so open to just give me a call. We do just this. We have a nice video call so we get to know each other. And I'm just so happy. Like, this is this is my jam. I just want to help people not just get through this, but thrive through this. This can be
Right.
such a turning point in your life and your kids' life, to be able to really find all those strengths, play on the strengths, and whatever we need work on, we all need to work on something.
Mhm.
We all need to work on something. Oh my God.
Absolutely. That kind of brings up another point when you were talking about getting through things and all that. I don't know about in Canada, but I know in the US and even like on some of the cruise lines and things like that that I've experienced, it seems like a lot of the support stop at age 12.
Mm,
And I never understood that. The person doesn't stop having autism because they turn 12. Why are we stopping the supports?
yeah. Well, we've had that with kids who are sight challenged. Like, all of a sudden, the accommodations and the modifications are going. It's like, they're not healed. What is happening here? I don't understand.
Yeah,
What the?
yeah.
And it's the same. And so here, the accommodations continue and modifications continue. There is a there is there are gaps in the funding. There are gaps in, you know, um, the ratio to support staff to students as they get into high school. There are
Mhm.
definitely the gaps there. But it doesn't stop at age 12. But there are very different limitations at every age, at every stage, and of course,
Right,
depending on
right.
the school you choose. And yeah,
And I think again that goes back to where like you and I can kind of help bridge those gaps.
yeah,
And I just love what you're doing. I think it's so great. I love connecting with you. I know we talked about maybe doing some collaboration. I'm very excited about that. Where one voice is strong, two voices are better.
yes, 100%. And it's just, it's kind of like the two of us kind of sitting on the top of the fence. We're able to kind of navigate all
Right.
areas of the playing field instead of going in, with one perspective. And, I don't balk at any advocates, but I know there are some that are like, I'll get you, like almost like a lawyer. I'll get you this, don't you worry. That doesn't help anybody. It might get you something for a semester, but it doesn't help anybody in the long run. We need to go into these meetings with
Mm,
curiosity and compassion and empathy for everybody at the table, and go from
yeah.
there.
Yeah. Go in standing in your power, but don't shove it in people's faces.
Beautiful. There's a quote I'm always going to use now.
You're welcome to it. We'll share that one. How about that? Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today. I'm so just excited that we were able to connect, and I love what you're doing. I love learning about other countries. It's so weird because we think of Canada, it's not like we think of Canada like we think of, like uh, I don't know, England or something like that. Even though you're another country, it's like, oh, it's Canada,
Yeah, we're
like
right here.
we're right here. It's just
Yeah.
right there. It's so funny. But yeah, I never until I got into doing what I'm doing now, I didn't think too much about what other countries are doing.
Mhm.
But I've always, even as a therapist, I've always believed that from everyone that I meet or encounter or do or work with, colleagues or whatever, I feel like I can learn from that.
Yeah,
I'm only as
1000%.
good and as helpful as what I know. And the
Yeah.
more I know, the more I can help. So the
Mhm.
more I learn, that just elevates everybody. And I love that. And I love that, that's always been my mindset. Whether I had 1 year of experience as a therapist or now that I have 30, I
Yeah.
can learn something from you. You can learn something from me. That is something that I've always believed. So thank you so much. And I'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you. It was my honor to be here. I love the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to collaborate.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
You as well.